Welcome to the Chief Aim podcast. This is your weekly dose of real experiences, insights, strategies, and action steps for entrepreneurs who want to build and are building something incredible. Welcome back to the Chief Aim podcast. We're back again, and today's episode, we're going to be rounding off the business series. So the business logic series that we did on the 9 points, which was traffic, which is free and organic. And then we went to opt-in, conversion rates, leads, sales, and then upsells and continuity. And this is the expenses. And this is going to be an important one because basically what comes into the sales pot and how you manage your expenses is not only going to determine what you can take out of the business as your own personal income, but also how you grow the business, how you can, and basically has a high influence on whether or not your business succeeds or not, because most businesses fail, and it's because of what we're going to be talking about in this particular episode. So, Seb, how you doing?
Good.
This
is right up your street, isn't it? Expenses.
It is right up my street. I should have just not got this. I was just going to do this one on my own.
I'm just here for the ride, really. I'll jump in now and again with the odd comment, and I'll let you do your thing.
No, look, but without this being a big lecture on like the do's and don'ts and what to do and really deep strategy, the basic principles it's like losing weight. It's like don't spend more than you earn, right? And make sure that you have a strategy behind how you manage your expenses. Because the reality is within 5 years, 90% of businesses fail. And then from 5 to 10 years, 90% of those fail. So you've got a very slim chance of actually succeeding. And the reason they fail is because of how they manage the cash in their business, how they manage the finances, tax bills and things like that, spending the tax money and all these kind of crazy stuff that people do. And there's some really quick fixes. But before we talk about the fixes and what you can do, what are some of the ramifications or drawbacks to not managing expenses in your business, would you say, Seb?
I think from my side, I see so many entrepreneurs build their businesses and they are useless at managing their finances, right? And what happens is 5 years into it, 10 years into it, even 15, 20 years into it, you've got entrepreneurs who have incredible businesses, but have no money at all. Like they've got no savings, they've got no investments. They're really struggling, right? And I know you've obviously built Tiers of Freedom, which helps entrepreneurs with that, which I've had the pleasure of being a part of as well. And I know some of the conversations we've had. You've had incredibly successful business owners who have come to you, and the reality is, while their revenue is really high and their income is really high, because they're not managing their expenses, they're just kind of stuck in this kind of purgatory of never really leaving having more freedom, more flexibility, having more security, right? And I think so many entrepreneurs enter the game of entrepreneurship with a figure in mind of what they want to earn, and they say to themselves, when they get there, they'll be happy, they'll feel secure, and they'll be free. They'll have freedom in their life. And as soon as they get there, typically what happens is they have lifestyle inflation. So they increase their living costs alongside their salary increase, if you like, from the business, or dividend increase, whatever it is. And you also see that in business as well, right? So their business starts picking up these random little expenses, which it doesn't need, and they don't stay lean, and the business starts getting a bit fat and, lazy. And the end result of that really is they get to this point where they're like, right, I've reached that figure. Now I'm not happy, I'm not secure, I'm not free, I want more. And ultimately, I think that what I love about your work is how it really takes emotion out of everything. And it just looks at it like, and this is the trader in you, right? It's like, you've got to make decisions every day, which are hundreds of thousands of pounds, win or lose decisions. And, you take the emotion out and you look at it like typically fractions and percentages, how you use and move your money, right? 10% on self-development, this much on marketing, and so on and so on. And so your business grows based on percentages. And I think that's a really clever way of growing your business without falling into the trap of lifestyle inflation, and falling in the trap of never investing or saving or putting money aside and growing a fatty business that isn't lean, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, if you're listening to this and you're an entrepreneur, I don't want this episode to like make you think that you've got to be a master of finances and value money management and all that kind of stuff, because you don't. And normally as entrepreneurs, you're not really interested in that. Even me, who has, you know, a genuine value on money and wealth building and all that kind of stuff, I still don't like to do things like accounting and all that kind of stuff. I just let an accountant do that because I'm more into the kind of the growth and how it's being distributed rather than the intricacies of accounting, which I find boring as hell, right? So you don't have to get involved with certain aspects of it, but there's some really simple things that you can do, because as Seb mentioned, what happens normally is because you're running, it's like this counterintuitive like trap that people fall into where they think, well, I'm going to get more money to get more freedom. But actually, because in doing that, because you're not managing your money wisely, you can't actually afford to delegate. You can't afford the talent that you need. You can't afford, you know, and what happens is you get so frustrated and burnt out that you then pay yourself too much as a reward because you need a big holiday to get over it. And all these guys, and it's like this, it's like a trap. It's like a spiral that you can get in very quickly. And then obviously the more you get into that, the harder it is to get out, because it's like, you know, I've spent all the money again. Now we've got this many clients to service and I've got to work even harder and harder and harder. And it really, you get no breathing room. You get no
do you know what I've noticed as well? For a lot of entrepreneurs, they get to that stage and then they fall out of love with their business, right?
Yeah.
Because their business feels more like a trap.
Sure.
It feels more like a prison, like they want to escape it. And so when they get to that stage, they either want to sell the business, start a new business because they got a new bright shiny idea, or they just distance themselves. And it's sad to see. It's kind of heartbreaking to see, because if they just fix some of the issues, right? Like if they just like had someone come in, look at their expenses and say, you don't need this, you don't need this. Let's refine this. Let's lean it out and then gradually build this system in place. Yeah. They'd feel more organized. They'd feel less stressed, and they would have more fun and freedom and passion in their business. And I think a lot of it is it comes down to the planning in advance, right? Like a lot of people, they don't do, the whole like profit first system, right? They don't put money aside every single month for VAT or for corporation tax and that sort of stuff, right? They don't put money aside for personal development. They don't put money aside for big bills that they expect to come up every single, quarter or yearly or whatever it is. Yeah. And so every time it comes up, it's like, oh, it's a shock. And suddenly they become more feast and famine. And so really understanding your expenses, it really plugs the hole in the bottom of your bucket, which is kind of leaking, right? And it's like, once you've got that, you're in a position where you can really focus on the things that matter, like sales, like innovation, without being stressed about all the expenses all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that it's just about sometimes swallowing your pride, taking a step back and being like, oh my God, we're spending more than we're earning, right? Yeah. For a lot of business owners, that's the reality. They're spending more than they're earning. Their business isn't actually profitable. Yeah. And as scary as that is, right? As scary as that is for a business owner to go through, it's liberating. Once they go through it and they're like, wow, I now realize what's going on in the business. Now I can fix it, right? We need to move out of our 4-bed detached, beautiful house and live in a 1-bed flat, right, on the outskirts of the city. And we need to cut our team down if we need to. We need to make changes here. Yeah. But now you've got a 5-year, 10-year plan, which gets you to where you want to go much faster. But it does take an element of swallowing your pride and being real.
Yeah, keeping up with the Joneses, which is probably the biggest problem in your personal wealth building, is going to follow you into business. And if you've got this pride thing of, I need this big office space with 20 staff and I need to pay for this and everyone has to have a company car and everyone has to have this, that, and the other, you're going to get swept along by we should have, rather than how is this productive and how is this adding bottom line to my business, and can I get rid of it while still giving the same value to the client to keep it lean and get the same result. So you do have to swallow the pride. So here's like a big hack to that, because as you said, removing emotion from it is key. And the biggest thing you can do, like the most obvious thing that you can do, is understand what you've got in terms of how much you can spend on certain things, so that it's not just in your head and you go, oh, I had a good month, perhaps we can afford this month, or perhaps so the first things first is just to separate how that income is managed, right? So most people, they have one bank account. I mean, the entrepreneurs that you're talking about, Seb, believe it or not, some of those are using their personal bank accounts to run their business, right? And I'm like, right, let's separate personal and business first. That's the first thing, right? The second thing is, don't just have one bank account. So all the income comes into one bank account, that's fine, but then set up sub accounts. You can do this very easily on many of the different online banking apps, Tide and Monzo and Revolut and Starling, all the rest of them now. And you can even set up high street banks, physical high street banks, and have separate accounts. And the idea is that every time that money comes in at the end of the month or the start of the month or whenever the money comes in, you do a process where you drain that account and you split it into those sub accounts, one for tax, one for operating costs, one for your profit account, and maybe one for R&D, where you put into development, research, testing in your business. You may have another account for like charity and stuff like that, but as I say, if you're just in the beginning stages of managing your expenses, you want to get this in order, don't worry about charity yet. Let's get this working, right? And then you can do that later. This is a quick shout out to the sponsor of this show, Shield, who help us deliver this podcast, along with all the social media that goes with it to help us get it out to more people, which leaves us to focus on just creating more great conversations. If you want to start, delegate, or optimize your social media or podcast, or if you want to build your very own online course or program, get in touch with the team at shieldglobal.io. And then what you can do is you can clearly see, right? First of all, the tax money's gone. That's not yours anyway. You get that in, it's gone. That's allocated. And you might even put a little bit more in there. So it's a nice surprise when you've got some left over. But the operating costs, the next thing to do is to go through those operating costs regularly. I'd say once every 6 months minimum, to cut out all the really like the red flags, right? The hot spots, the things that are really standing out at you. And you think, wow, I didn't realize we were spending that much on the coffee machine, or I didn't realize we were spending that much on the driver or what have you, right? And you can start to prioritize negotiating or deleting or reducing those particular hotspots. That's the first thing you do. And I know, Seb, I mean, you're bang on this stuff right now. Like, and what difference does that make to you?
It's a massive difference, right? It's so easy if you're scaling a fast growing business, it's so easy to get swept up in additional costs. You're like, right, cool, we're going to expand here, we're going to throw money at this and at that, and you need people in your team. Like, looking at that bigger picture, right? Going from an individual entrepreneur looking at their own expenses, as your team grows, you almost want people who look at the marketing and say yes or no to things on your behalf. So we've got someone who manages all of the marketing and says if things are worth it or not, and they cut costs themselves, right? They're responsible for cutting costs. We've got someone who manages the finances of just like the basic office stuff, right? So we've got like 10 offices in a few different countries, and we've got someone who looks at everything. Are we spending too much money on paper? Are we spending too much money on like light bulbs, whatever it is? And they'll find ways of cutting things down. And that's
another level of removing your emotion, right? Having someone else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I've built in this system of keeping the business lean into the foundation of the whole business, right? So as you grow, you keep those solid margins. And the important thing about having good margins, keeping your expenses low and having good margins in your business is it means that you can over deliver to your customers, right? If you've got good solid margins, you can produce a premium service which competes, in a far better way with your competition. If you've got no margins, you'll start to make cuts here and there to things that will actually really help your customers have a better experience. The other thing is you're more able then to weather difficult economic situations, COVID, someone quitting, you name it, right? It's like, if something comes up, you're able to weather that. The other thing I'd say is obviously when you have better margins, you can build a better buffer. You've got that war chest, which means that when something happens, you're in a position to look after yourself, and it gives you that balanced state of mind which is really, really useful.
Yeah.
So I think for me, the biggest thing is I used to do all this stuff myself, but then it took me away from doing the other stuff like talking, telling stories about the business, innovating, creating, because I had to worry about all the little bits that was going on, right? And then as I grew, I just kind of found the better people than me at finding these little gaps.
Yeah.
You know, there are people in our team who are better at finding cost-cutting things than I am. Right.
Yeah,
so
negotiating deals with like insurance suppliers or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, and it's amazing how much you can cut. Like I could cut 20,000-30,000 pounds tomorrow from the business, and we probably wouldn't feel it, right? As a monthly expense. And it's, you know, I get messages, you know, now and again throughout the week saying I've just cut 500 quid off our monthly bill, and it's like amazing. The team just do that without me, and I think that you can inspire your team to really enjoy building this in a very lean way if you want to build a performance business. But the same mindset around lifestyle business too.
Yeah, totally. So the reason I say you have to do it frequently, as Seb just mentioned there, it's easy to spiral out of control. And with advances in technology and new apps coming out, new softwares coming out, it's very easy to quickly sign up to the next thing. So you do have to keep on top of it. It's not like you do it once and then you're good to go for a year, because you might sign up for Otter, or you might sign up for the Zoom business thing and this and that, and you can very quickly accumulate a lot of software subscriptions, which we do. And then after 6 months, we go, have we used that? Do we use that? Is that valuable? Is it critical? Let's get rid of it, or let's keep it, or let's negotiate to the better package. Or so you do have to keep on top of it. So if you're wondering, like, how do you kind of prioritize these expenses? We normally run it through, so you set up your accounts and then you go to the expenses tab, and then the way you optimize this is you run it through two kind of priority matrices. One is whether it's critical or highly valued. So like insurance would be critical, okay, but not highly valued. Whereas something that's highly valued might be your team day out, or your team, maybe you have certain things in the office that, like, the fridge is filled with drinks, and that's or you order pizza on a Friday or something like that, and that's highly valued. And then whatever's most highly valued and most critical, you keep, and whatever's least critical and least valued, you cancel or delete and get rid of straight away. And then there's a kind of, if it's really critical but not as valued, you negotiate or you delegate it or you automate it, like Seb was talking about with the finances. And if it's really highly valued but not critical, you can look at reducing and doing less of, right? So that's the first thing, critical and highly valued. The next thing is where you run it through the next matrix of the greatest saving over the complexity of making the saving. So there's some things where, wow, I can just shave that in half. Obviously, you're going to want to do that first, right? And if it's really not complex to do, it's literally ring up someone and go, can you cancel that or make this half? Do that first. So the more complex it is, and the less saving you're going to make, do that last. And then the more kind of the least complex it is and the greatest saving, you do that first. And then you run it along that scale. And then anything that's kind of due in a year or due in 6 months, just make a note of the date, put it in your diary and go, right, we've got to go and negotiate that deal or change supplier or whatever it is. And that's it. Like, if you just do that and you set up your accounts and you split the accounts and you pay everyone from the operating costs, and you know what profits there, you know what taxes there, you know what you're putting into R&D and all that, then you just prioritize your expenses. You're going to be in the 1% of businesses. I promise you, 1%, top 1%. And
now imagine when you do that, you've then got all this extra cash to improve your product or service.
Exactly.
So now you've catapulted yourself into the 0.1%, right? Well, one of the things I love that you said there was negotiate. That's so true. COVID really taught me that. When COVID happened, we always had to make so many drastic cuts. And I just said to our team, look, who are managing our finances, negotiate on everything. Yep. Like, go out there and get a statement, look at every single thing on your statement, phone up the supplier, phone up the landlord, phone up whoever it is, and just say, look, I want to negotiate from either A, getting a discount because we've been with you for a long time, and we can extend the service that the amount of time we'll be with you if you're happy to give us a discount now. Or number two, can you give us, is it possible to give us more for what we're currently paying? Yeah. Or number three, can you defer payments during cash flow dips in the year, right? So let's just say you have a dip over the summer. Is it possible to pay normally up until May, and then pay more from September to December, or whatever it is, and the way in which your business works. So that's got a massive effect, negotiation. And also the other thing I was thinking was, the way I often look at this is fixed costs versus variable costs. So, and I do this from a personal finances perspective as well. I always keep my fixed costs within my financial freedom figure. So, we've got a certain amount of which we make from stocks and shares or whatever it is, right, from your investments. And I always try and keep my fixed costs under that. The variable costs are things like holidays, things like going out for a meal, expensive gym memberships, the things that you could cut tomorrow and you'd be fine, right? And I think that way you have a bit of a balance. You're not being really stingy on, restricting yourself in your lifestyle.
Yeah, being uninspired to live.
Yeah, exactly. And so we deliberately live in a much smaller house than we could afford, right? And the reason for that is because that's a fixed cost. I see anything more than a year like a fixed cost. We don't have long-term loans on cars and all that sort of stuff, right? So the fixed costs for me are like fairly cheap rent, education for the kids, and I just make sure that all of those fixed costs are under the investment return, and then the variable costs will be half potentially of what we would take as a salary from the business, and the other half I would then invest, right? So I kind of split things into three that way. And that works really well, because then you get the benefit of both worlds. You can expand and look forward to that. You're making sure you're investing more than you're spending, and your fixed costs give you, they're lower than your investment ROI. So you've got so much security there, which I think is really, really important. And you don't experience this massive lifestyle inflation then, which a lot of people go through.
But then, like everything, it's exponential. So I did exactly that. I became financially free when I lived in a 3-bedroom semi-detached house, and I was there for 7 years. And people were like, "Why haven't you got a bigger house? Why haven't you got this, that, and the other?" But then when I got to the position that I wanted to get to after those 7 years, I moved into like
no one expected it.
A pool, and like it was amazing. And it was like, wow, because I had played that long game. And what you said about negotiating, everything's negotiable and everything. If you're listening to this series and you've heard us talk about lifetime customer value and churn rate and all this kind of stuff, you understand that these businesses would rather keep you for some money than lose you for no money, right? So everything's negotiable. You can negotiate everything.
You would be so amazed at what you can negotiate if you just ask, but people don't ask. People think that there's no chance you can negotiate your expenses. You really can if you just ask. Here's what if we were going to round this off, I would say, print off your statement. The one tip from me would be print off your statement and get someone or yourself to go through every single thing on the statement, phone someone up and try and negotiate something from that. Here's what happened. Probably a third of it you'll be able to negotiate and you'll get a discount on and you'll get a saving from that, right?
For sure.
But the other byproduct is that you'll get better at negotiating. And that's actually really useful as well. And so every single term, we kind of run termly rather than quarterly. Every single term, we do a termly efficiency challenge where we do this. So we get the whole team to negotiate on costs, and we do the critical, the high impact stuff, as you mentioned, with the kind of the four boxes. And it keeps the business lean without you having to worry about, is it lean or not, right? Inspire your team to do that. So those are the two things I would say on managing expenses, right?
Yeah. Awesome. And then I would just add the optimization process. So there's an optimization process that I teach where you take the savings that you've saved on liabilities or things that aren't serving your business and the inefficiencies, and you put them into efficiencies. So imagine that you make all these savings. Let's just say you do what Seb says and you go through the list and you make all these savings, right? And let's just say you manage to save 10% of your outgoings. And that might equate to, I don't know, £1,000 a month, £2,000 a month, might even be £10,000 a month, depending on the size of your business. You then pretend that you don't have that money and you put it into an optimization account where you go, how can we spend this to make the business grow? So things like research and development, training for your team. And what we tend to do is we split it in between development. So like, how can we build and grow and develop and research and tweak and all that kind of stuff? Because by the way, that's all subjective to R&D, tax reliefs and all that. But the other bit, we could put a fraction of that, 10%, 20% into fun stuff for the team, where you go and do a day out, or you go and like, you basically, if everyone's put they're all into finding the kind of savings, you can incentivize that by going, right, this much goes into growing the business and this much goes into fun for the team, which also grows the business because you keep loyal team and people want to be part of your business, right? And you go and have a big fun day out, or you do a holiday or a retreat or something for the business team, and that has a return on itself, right? So you can use that cash in those ways to then grow the business.
Brilliant. And I think just making that a practice, making that a normal practice, right?
Make it a normal practice.
I mean, the first thing I would do if I was making a saving, if I realized, God, I can save £1,000 a month here. The first thing I would do is I would for the first 6 months, if you haven't done it already, is put that into a buffer, right?
Yeah.
So stage one of this is just get a buffer. You become a better person when you've got a buffer. You're more fun to work with. You're more relaxed. Your wife or husband will like you more as well, because you'll be less stressed.
Absolutely.
If you're doing feast and famine and you're always stressed and you haven't got any savings at all for your business or even for your personal life, like you're normally quite difficult to be around, because you're so stressed all the time. I've been through it, and I know so many business owners who have. So make the cuts.
People talking to you and you're just not there. You're just not there at all.
You're so stressed and worried about finances. You're not present at all, and your customers pick up on that as well.
Definitely.
And
definitely.
It's amazing what just the kind of monkey brain in you, right? The reptile mode is just like, oh, if I have a bag of coins at home, suddenly I'm less stressed and I'm actually a better person, and I'm not talking to a customer, but really I'm not there. I'm figuring out if I can pay the electricity bill next week. And it's relatively easy. Negotiate your prices down, save the difference, build a buffer, repeat it as an action going forward. Build a lean business, reinvest into your business's growth in efficient areas. Boom, job done.
Cool. And I think we're going to do an episode on like leverage, but
I think debt. I think we need to do on a debt.
Yeah, one of the things that we could talk about is just debt quickly.
I reckon that's almost worth another episode, because if we talk about leverage, we're talking more about good debt, right? But I think you've got so much to share when it comes to how to deal with bad debt, how to actually, because it's such an overwhelming subject, isn't it? And feeling for people who are stuck under loads of debt. So how they get into debt, how they escape debt, and the different routes you can do that, right?
Yeah, I think that's probably another episode, but just to round this one off, it is an expense. And I would just say, be aware of debts. And when you're doing your hotspot identification, just note down whether it's a debt or not, and check the APR things on those, so you can get a priority list of what you need to knock off first. But essentially anything that puts money into your pocket is a good debt. Cash flow producing debts, and you get cash taking debts, which is things that take money out of your pocket, and you don't end up better off at the end of the debt. That's so start being aware of it. That's all I'd say on this episode. And we'll cover that off in another one. So that's like what we've been going like 26, 27 minutes. So I think that rounds that one off. And let me know in the comments let us know in the comments if you've got any other tips or hacks for managing your expenses that have helped you in your business. We'd love to hear those. And until next time, as always, take care. Have a great rest of your day. And we'll see you then. If you're enjoying these podcasts, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're really getting value from these, we'd really love it if you could let us know on our review page. We'll see you next week.